Graham, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi,
Hey,
Nick. We can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay?
Good afternoon. Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay?
Good afternoon, Brett. Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I see we have about 7 people who are joining us at this time. It is 5:20, so we are going to give it another 10 or 15 minutes or so. The meeting is scheduled to begin at 5:30. We'll probably give an extra 3 to 5 minutes for some last minute people to join us, and then we'll begin. So you're welcome to sit tight and join us, those of us who have already logged in. Or you can log off for the next 10 or 15 minutes and join back in at 5:30 when we begin the meeting. Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the Cultural Corridor Public Information Meeting. We are going to give it another 3 or 4 minutes, and then we're going to start the meeting. Thank you all for being patient. We're looking forward to presenting you all of the information about the project this afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Cultural Corridor Public Meeting. We have a great presentation lined up for you this afternoon, as well as some opportunities to ask some questions utilizing the chat screen. It looks like we've got a large group of folks with us. I'm seeing 53 already, and I'm sure we're going to see that number grow in the coming minutes. But in the interest of being courteous to everybody's time, we are going to go ahead and begin. And so I'm going to introduce Beth Brotherton with the City of Greenville, who is going to be our MC for the evening and is going to help us navigate the program. So Beth, take it away.
Thank you so much. Well, hey, everybody. Probably know many of you who are online with us because you're regulars, if you will, and active in your city government, which we're so thankful for because we do deeply value public input and your opinion. And so excited to have you here this evening as we start the process of getting your input and telling you more about this project that we're teaming up on that really is something that has been many years in the making. And we're excited is now coming to fruition. Just to give you a very quick overview of what we're talking about before we turn it over to specifics. This idea of cultural corridor even has not necessarily resonated with some people. So, we've kind of tried to talk about this idea of what are we even aiming to do? And the goal here is kind of twofold. It is really to connect downtown to Heritage Green and connect both of those places better to surrounding neighborhoods. And so we're really excited about some of the streetscaping, the lighting, the multi-use paths, some of the road work. But ultimately the goal here is, say, if you're visiting Greenville and you're staying at one of the downtown hotels and you brought your kids with you and you want easy pedestrian or bike access to the Children's Museum or the theater or the library, right now it almost feels like there's this unseen barrier in between where it might not feel that friendly. So we want to open up that window. In the same way, we want to open up the window on the other side for locals who might be regulars at the Children's Museum or at the Upcountry History Museum and might want to come have a nice meal downtown on the back end of that, and would also want those same pedestrian friendly safety improvements along the way. And in the meantime, we're looking to improve traffic flow. And so I would love to introduce Clint Link, who is our Director of Public Works, previously city engineer for us. So he knows all the ins and outs of the traffic engineering piece. And so, Clint, we're really excited about this as we talk about making this more pedestrian friendly, improving the lighting, but also improving some connectivity with the neighborhood and traffic flow as well, right?
Certainly. We're very excited about this. So thank you. That was a great introduction to the project. You kind of hit the highlights and kind of define what cultural corridor means. And for many of you out there, you've maybe heard of the project for several years. Maybe it's a new project you're just kind of getting familiar with, but certainly glad y'all could take a little time out of your evening to join us tonight. Certainly appreciate your time and value your input on this project. Looks like we got great attendance, so we are very excited about that. Again, my name is Clint Link, Director of Public Works for the City of Greenville. Pleasure to be here tonight to kind of introduce our project team. I'm going to do a quick introduction of our project team panelists. This project is being coordinated across multiple departments at the city, but for the convenience of this meeting, we do have some of our key panelists that are working on the project for both the city and our consultants that are assisting us with this. And I'm going to do a quick introduction of our team. I'm going to give you a little bit of background, a little more background information on the project and some of the goals of this of the project. And then I'm going to, we have about a 20 to 25 minute presentation. Our consultants are going to kind of walk you through, kind of give you an update of where we are and show you some of the preliminary plans that we've got. And then we'll kind of conclude with some question and answer. I mean, I think we're going to do that through chat. And Beth, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Do you need to go through any more project formatting before we get started?
No, absolutely. No, exactly right. So once you introduce the team, we're going to turn things over to the consultants, kind of give them some visuals of what we're trying to do, and then save plenty of time at the end for folks to ask questions. The way we're going to do it is through the chat feature. I see a couple of people have already found it and are on there. So if you have questions, you can really start entering them at any time in the presentation. We'll be monitoring those and then we'll get to them at the end. So don't think that just because we keep moving that we haven't heard your question or seen it. We're just going to save questions to the end, but really at any point, feel free to type in.
Very good. Thank you, Beth. So real quick, our project team from the city of Greenville. My name is Clint Link again. This project is being managed out of our engineering division. Nick DePalma is our project manager that's managing this project on the city's behalf. We have Beth Brotherton and MJ Simpson from our public relations communications team that have been very instrumental thus far on this project and will continue to be as we go through the project implementation and final design. And then Shannon Laverin, our assistant city manager, is on our panel tonight from the city. We do have HDR. We've hired them as our consultant on this project. We got them under contract a little over a year ago. They got started and underway. But with the HDR team is Brett Hessel. He's the project manager for HDR, and he's going to be kind kind of taking the lead on the presentation here shortly. Graham Malone is the traffic engineer on the project and has plays a vital role in what you'll hear some of the traffic analysis and the traffic component, engineering component of this project. Lauren Roeder and Pierce Sprague is with the HDR public engagement team. And then we have Jamie Kreminsky with HDR, who is kind of the bicycle pedestrian multimodal specialist for HDR. So we have this is a big bike pedestrian kind of friendly project. And glad to see we've got some expertise on the project team to kind of guide us through the project development with respect to that. Just real quick, a little history of the cultural corridor. This project's been around in the city for a little while now. It dates back to 2012 when we started kind of doing some initial engineering studies and scoping of the project. The project it's kind of been there for a while, and it's the scope of the project has changed over the years, and due to various reasons, I would say probably primarily budget and just kind of shifting priorities within the city and those sort of things. The project's just kind of never gotten to a point where we were ready to move forward with it. We were looking at different scopes, and the project was kind of involved different lengths of roadway, and kind of the scope of the project has kind of changed over time. But most recently we've gotten underway and we've gotten HDR kind of under contract, and we are moving for the project. The project is budgeted for construction now. So I'm pleased to say we are kind of in the design and engineering phase, and it's a pretty complex project, so that takes a little while, but we're excited that we do have the council and mayor's support of this project, and from a budgeting standpoint, we're poised to move forward with construction. We can go to the next slide. As some of the goals of the project, this is an extension of our Main Street. That's what we're wanting to do. As Beth was mentioning, we want the pedestrian experience that you have, that we're so known for in Greenville on Main Street. We want to continue that over to our cultural institutions, the Heritage Green Plaza and area where we have our museums and our library and other resources over there. The other thing is we want to extend that connection, as Beth mentioned, to our neighborhoods over there. We have Viola neighborhood over there. The Hampton Pinckney neighborhood is in close proximity and has a connection there. So we're not only does this project kind of extend and provide a vital connection within our central business district to important resources that we have, but it also connects, enhances through connecting our neighborhoods and that sort of thing. So economic development and growth along this corridor is a major goal for the project. Kind of looking a little ahead to number 3 there, a primary goal is we want to enhance pedestrian safety. We want to enhance multimodal transportation. So we want those who are on bikes or who are kind of pushing a stroller or that sort of thing. We want them to have a safe means of getting from Main Street over these 3 blocks over to Heritage Green. So improving pedestrian safety and mobility along the road is a primary goal. As part of this, kind of how the project has developed with respect to our traffic, this required us to kind of look at some improvements along Academy Street as well, where we're looking to kind of offset some of the traffic impacts that this project is expected to create. And going through our permitting with SCDOT, we've identified various intersections along Academy Street that we will also be doing some improvements at to just help with the overall traffic flow. And it's important to realize that this project, this cultural corridor project, like I say, it dates back a little ways. It was first recommended in our 2011 downtown streetscape master plan. It was identified as a vital project to enhance further develop our downtown and our central business district. More recently, our 2019 downtown strategic master plan. It was again cited in there to improve this pedestrian connection to Heritage Green. And then our consultants, HDR, actually helped us with our 2019 downtown transportation master plan. And this project was also identified in the transportation master plan as a key project to improve pedestrian safety in our city. So moving ahead, we'll talk a little bit about the project. To the next slide, please. So here, this gives you a visual of the project. The Culture Corridor project begins at Main Street and it extends over to Heritage Green. It goes over to there to the Upstate History Museum. And I believe that is not quite going all the way down to Atwood, but there where the Buncombe and College Street kind of come together there at Heritage Green. That's kind of shown graphically there, kind of in the light green line that's shaded. Might be a little hard to see, but basically Main Street over to Heritage Green. Also, what you'll see is highlighted in kind of a pink color line is Academy Street. And this is the section of Academy Street where we're having to look at some traffic improvements to try to help with moving traffic. One of the goals of the project is to encourage people who are just trying to get from the east side of town or to the west side of town or vice versa. If they're just passing through, we want to make Academy Street a more conducive route for the people who are not trying to get through downtown, don't have a downtown as their destination point, just trying to get from east to west. We want to make things a little easier for traffic to move on Academy Street, encourage drivers to do that. We got a couple of pictures of the court.
Sorry, and Clint,
ahead.
not to interrupt you, because we are going to take questions at the end, but we are at an interesting point here where there are these two things, trying to put more cars on Academy, but at the same time, make Academy easier to get across for pedestrians. And so we are thinking about both of those things at the same time, right?
Yep. Oh yeah, it is a challenging balance, as you can probably imagine. Academy is a major arterial through our downtown, and it's a heavily traveled road, and College Avenue has a fair amount of traffic on it as well. And so trying to balance those needs of the road between the pedestrian and accommodate efficient traffic flow is always a challenge for us. It's exciting for engineers to work on these kind of projects where we get to kind of use our skill sets and that sort of thing. And I'm pleased we got HDR helping us with this because these guys are experts in the field, so I feel very comfortable. But yes, I would say probably one of the more challenging parts of this project is how do we get pedestrians safely across Academy Street? That's a busy intersection. We've got actually what's great about this is we've got in this presentation, you'll see a little bit, that's a kind of we got a couple of alternatives we want to share, and we're looking for specifically for public input on that, and hopefully accomplishing that through this meeting. We do have a survey that we're asking everybody to kind of assist us with as far as getting your input on these alternatives that we're going to show. So, and I'll just say we do have this information is on the city's website, so that'll be a good way to keep up with the project. There's this online survey that we're going to reference here in a little while and provide you that link to that can be found there. So we're very excited about it. If you want to move to the next slide, just shows a few pictures of the corridor. Many of you may be familiar with it. The picture there on the right is kind of looking east down College Avenue. You can see basically we got 4 lanes of traffic there. I believe that is looking across Academy Street, kind of looking east down College. And then the picture on the left is kind of looking the opposite direction, kind of standing close to Richardson Street there and kind of looking towards Academy and looking towards Richardson and Academy Street. So there's existing 4 lanes of travel out there right now. You can see sidewalks are pretty narrow, especially for sidewalks in a central business district. Very narrow. They're very close to the road. You don't have a lot of separation from the road to where the pedestrian realm is. There's no bike lanes on this. We don't have any accommodations for cyclists. So that's totally unlike what you see on Main Street and on some of the other streets in our CBD. So we're looking to really enhance that pedestrian environment by doing some traffic calmings, some narrowing of the travel lanes and reduction of a travel lane through a large part of this to create better separation. And that's what we're going to kind of show you tonight is kind of where we are with the plans and how we're proposing to do some of this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brett Hessel with HDR, and he's going to begin walking you through the preliminary plans for the project. And thank you again.
Thank you, Clint. I hope everybody can hear me all right. Again, my name is Brett Hessel. I work with HDR. I'm here in Greenville, work right downtown. So this is an area we're very familiar with. Excited to work on a project with the city as a partner in our own neighborhood. So we're really excited to share with you where we've gotten to on this study so far. So we've developed some conceptual ideas for the project. And I would like to add that this project is, as Clint mentioned, it's following the College Street corridor, which is a South Carolina primary state route, and as well as Academy Street. That is a U.S. primary route. So both of these roads are technically owned by the SCDOT. So they are a major partner in this coordination as well. So we've been meeting quite often with the DOT and the city to talk about the study thus far. We've done a lot of traffic analysis and traffic data collection, and modeled that information to help us guide the improvements for this project. And so what I'd like to present first is what we call a section view and a plan view of what's being proposed for the cultural corridor. So these slides that show a section view of the roadway are though you are standing on the Heritage Green side or Academy Street side of College and looking towards Main Street, if you can kind of picture that. So on your left would be, and I'm going to present these block by block. So we're going to start at the top of the hill at Main Street where this project begins, and we're going to go to first Towns and Richardson Street intersection. So what you see on this slide is an existing view. This is what it looks like today. Clint showed you a photograph there. This kind of gives you a schematic of what is actually there and how wide it is. So today you've got 4 lanes of traffic for cars, as shown on this diagram. You've also got a parking lane for part of that block. You've got sidewalks, but they're not very wide. You have a 7-foot sidewalk on one side of the road and a 5-foot on the other, as well as you do have that variable width park area that begins at Main Street and starts to narrow back down as you get towards Richardson and Town Street. This block is basically got buildings on both sides. So we're kind of constrained with what we can do with the right of way. But one of the goals is, as we've talked all along so far, is to reallocate some of this space away from totally being dominated by vehicular traffic and make it become more useful for more users of this corridor. So the next slide shows our presented proposed idea for changing this section. So what you'd have is we would look to take away one of those travel lanes on College Street, as well as the on-street parking. That would provide a good bit more space to be able to put a much wider planting strip. That's another goal of this project, as Clint mentioned. We want to carry Main Street over to Heritage Green. We want the green. We want to add beautification to this corridor. Right now, it's a lot of asphalt, a lot of concrete. So that goes along with making this a place that you would like to walk along. Adding street trees. We see placing some pretty large trees to make this corridor much like Main Street. So you've got to have a pretty wide buffer to do that. And that's what we're showing here, an 8 to 10 foot wide landscape strip. And then to accommodate both pedestrians and bicyclists, we're proposing a shared use or a multi-use path, one on both sides of the road. So it doesn't matter which side of College Street you originate from Main Street, you can traverse towards the Heritage Green or coming back from Heritage Green using either side of the road. We're also looking to leave the retail section there on the right of your screen. We'll still have a nice wide sidewalk that'll get revitalized. So this is what it would look like in the section view. We're going to go look next at what it would look like from above. So to orient you, on the right of your screen is Beatty Place as you're coming in from East North Street and 385 into downtown. The color coding on your screen, the yellow represents, this is the proposed conceptual plan for the corridor. So the yellow represents where the pavement, where the paved limits would be for vehicular traffic. The green represents the landscaping buffer and planting areas that would be proposed. And the purple represents the sidewalks and shared use paths space that's being dedicated through the right-of-way width. Additionally, we're showing some kind of a cross hatching there underneath the green. That kind of gives you an idea of how much of the pavement that's there today would be actually removed and be converted over to a green space on this section of the block and provide more space for the plantings, as well as provide a much wider buffer. And that's an important thing. You still got a lot of traffic on College Street, and you will in the future. So we want to provide a wider space between cars and people. That's one of the goals, is to make this a safer corridor to walk along and something more pleasant to walk along. So the way this would happen is you would have 4 lanes on Beatty Place, and you would drop that innermost lane there in front of the Hyatt as a left turn onto Main Street. That would involve some signage changes and pavement marking changes, of course, in advance, alerting drivers to the change that's coming up that will be different from what they're accustomed to today. So that covers the first block from Main Street to Richardson and Town Street. I'm going to walk through the next block. This will take you from Town Street to Academy Street. So on this block, we are currently have a 4-lane section as well. We've got a lot of extra pavement width. You can see here 13-foot wide lanes, which is excessive for what this road needs in a downtown core like this. So we're going to reallocate again some of that space to provide more space for pedestrians, bicyclists, and landscaping. You've also got some sidewalks on this stretch today, but again, they're quite narrow and insufficient for the use that's needed on this corridor and to promote walking and biking on the corridor. The next slide will show you how we plan to convert this section. So we would reduce those travel lanes down to 11 feet. We'll look at going for half of this block, and I'll show you in a moment on the plan view, but for half of this block, you'll have the 3 lanes. We'll pick up a 4th lane to add a left turn onto Academy Street. This has been generated due to the high traffic demand for those left turning vehicles that are coming down into downtown and needing to get onto Academy Street to go point south. So as you can see with this, we're also looking at widening, providing a 12-foot wide shared use path on both sides of the street, as well as a nice planting strip and buffer. And the next slide will kind of show you what that looks like in aerial view. So again, as go back one more. Thank you. So this shows that block. Basically, you have the 3 lanes on your right coming through from Richardson and Town Street, and we'll be introducing that turn lane as you come up to Academy Street. Clint also mentioned some alternatives that we're going to present. I'll do that here in a moment, but I did want to share that this slide shows 4 lanes approaching Academy Street. Both of those alternatives are going to require 4 lanes. We've been coordinating that with the State Department of Transportation. We've looked at the traffic analysis, and the volumes there are pretty heavy that both use that as a through and a left turn movement onto Academy Street. So this kind of shows you what that would look like. You'd have much wider sidewalks as you come up to Academy Street. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the actual intersection and what's being proposed with those 2 alternatives on the alternative slides that I'll share next. So we'll go one more block from Academy Street over to Heritage Green Place. So the project is proposed to actually end at Heritage Green Place and Whitner Street, which is where the entrance to the public library is on Heritage Green. Not a whole lot of changes proposed here. As you can see today, there's a pretty wide sidewalk in front of the museums. There's a bus loading zone there for school buses, et cetera, to drop off. That'll still be part of the proposed plan. There's 4 lanes for cars, and that's not needed on this section of road. So we're looking at, and there's also a sidewalk today on the other side as well. We'll present the next slide. We'll kind of show how we're proposing to change this area. So the area in front of Heritage Green would really stay quite the same. You'd still have the loading zone there, but we would look to eliminate that 4th lane that you saw on the right and make this 2 lanes as you access from Academy that turns into a 3rd lane. One challenge we have with College Street and 183 is there is a lot of traffic that then comes from Academy and tries to head west out of town. It's a major route for vehicles trying to leave downtown. So there is a lot of traffic that now leaves on College Street and what turns into Buncombe Street to the west. And as you probably know, the Butler Street intersection is a very heavily utilized intersection. So we need to develop that 3rd lane at some point to allow vehicles to store up at those and await those traffic lights during those peak hours. So these are the plans for this section. We would widen the sidewalk on the right-hand side and create a 10-foot wide multi-use path, as well as a wider planting strip by taking some of that pavement away. And the next slide will show you that in plan view. So as you can see, the green area is basically where that fourth lane currently exists today. That would become an additional buffer area. There's already some landscaping there at the redevelopment of the tower, which is the Canvas Tower project. This will be a great opportunity to create some more green, some more landscape interest opposite the museums, and create a really beautiful corridor as you come through in the Heritage Green area. All right, well, that's the corridor. Let's talk about a couple of alternatives we're looking at Academy Street and present these ideas to you. This is the intersection. We're looking at two options right now. As I mentioned, the traffic's quite heavy coming down College Street as well as on Academy Street itself. So this alternative one would have two lanes that are required to turn left from College Street onto Academy Street. That's a little bit of a change from what's there today. Today, you can be in the second lane and actually continue straight through the intersection. So that's one idea that's changed here. You would have two lanes that continue across. And the benefit of this is really for pedestrians and other users that want to cross this intersection. You can see with the green and the cross hatching, we will be narrowing that crossing on College Street significantly on the west side of Academy, or the left side of your photograph there. So that crossing becomes much shorter, which is great for pedestrians crossing over to the Children's Museum. The crossing on the right side will also become shorter. Another great benefit of this alternative is that you end up having what's termed a protected crossing on the south side of Academy. Today, that crossing is dangerous. It's difficult to cross because you have to merge traffic that's turning left from College onto Academy Street. Basically, is supposed to yield for someone in a crossing situation, and it's difficult for them to see people, and it's difficult for people to see both lanes of traffic turning, especially when that second lane can continue straight today. So what would happen with this option is pedestrians would get a walk across that southern or lower part of Academy Street, and they would not be conflicting anymore with turning traffic from College Street. That would be on a separate phase of the signal. So those left turns would go all by themselves after the pedestrian phase, or vice versa. So there's a good benefit there. Another benefit is we're looking at adding at the top of your screen, that orange shaded area would be a raised median or island in the middle of Academy Street. It would extend what's there today, and that would provide a refuge. So if you don't happen to be able to make the crossing all in one stage, there is going to be a nice wide area there where you can await the next crossing of the street. So that'll be an additional feature. There will also be additional crosswalk visibility. We will be looking at much higher visibility than what you see here on the screen. We'll be looking at different features, be working with the SCDOT to make that a very prominent crossing, so it's much more visible that this is a zone where both bikes and pedestrians are going to be using this area and crossing the street. One result from this lane change is that you will have slightly more traffic backup on College Street. So we do want to make that known, that this effort will have one less travel lane that continues across from College Street from east to west. So our models are showing that you would have a little bit more queuing or backup there at the traffic light if you're heading west. The benefit on this option is to the pedestrians and bike safety. There is a little bit of a detriment to the vehicular traffic with this alternative. So let's look at alternative 2. Next slide, please. This slide is really not a whole lot of different as described before. So you're not going to have two left turns that turn together from College Street. That lane will stay kind of like it is today, where you can continue straight or turn left. one way to help mitigate, so you would still have an unprotected crossing on the south leg of Academy Street, but one thing we could do is looking at what's called a leading ped interval, where we can signalize the ped crossing early before we give a green light to traffic. That gives pedestrians a chance to start their path across the street and become more visible and get at least partly across the street before any cars have a chance to begin going on the green light. Again, not as this option's not as enhanced for safety and pedestrian safety. It does still reduce the crossing distances. It reduces the vehicular widths on College Street that you have to cross. It does still have the raised island on Academy Street to allow for a pedestrian refuge. So these are the two alternatives we've looked at, and the traffic congestion on this alternative would be very similar to what the current condition is today with the 4 lanes that you have coming from the east, traveling west. So these are the two alternatives we've looked at. We looked at several other ideas early on. Again, we're trying to balance the needs of the traffic and try to make this also a safe corridor, much safer corridor for pedestrians and bicyclists. And again, I do want to mention both of these streets are South Carolina DOT streets, and all of these ideas we have to coordinate with the DOT and get their blessing to move forward with these designs. The next section of our presentation is to discuss Academy Street itself. We mentioned early on that this was the city's looking at ways to make Academy Street function better as a bypass. If we can get some of that traffic that's coming in from the east and from 385 to not go through downtown, that would be a benefit to everyone who's walking and biking on this corridor or just traveling around the local downtown area. So we've identified some areas where we may look at doing some improvements to help that traffic use Academy Street more efficiently and promote traffic to use it instead of coming into town on College Street. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to our traffic expert, Graham Malone, and let him lead you through these spot improvements on Academy Street. Thank you.
Hey, Graham, thanks so much. Just a reminder to folks to continue to ask your questions in the chat box, and we will get to them when Graham completes his portion of the presentation. You're asking some great questions, and if we don't get to them, we do use these for FAQs on our website and to help develop further public input and engagement. So even if you feel like somebody else has already asked the question, but it's important to you, again, all feedback is good feedback. And so just continue to use that chat feature. And I'm taking notes. I'm sure the consultant is, and we're going to screenshot this and keep these as well. So Graham, I apologize for the interruption. Take it away.
No, that's okay. Thanks. Can everybody hear me? Good. Okay. Yeah, as Brett mentioned, I'll be talking about some of the proposed strategies that would be implemented along Academy Street. And we can go to the next slide. So as we kind of get an overview of the area, I mean, if you're familiar with the city of Greenville, you already are aware of, how Academy Street functions as kind of a top end ring road, although there are some points where it is somewhat challenging to access it, at least at peak times. And one of the things that we're trying to accomplish with this bypass, if you will, is making that more accessible and cleaning up some of these areas that are causing kind of recurring stops that we're seeing, both from our day-to-day experience and also from models that we have run. What you're seeing on your screen here is a downtown aerial image, and I just want to point out the volumes that are shown in those arrows on the north end of Academy Street there between Church Street and Main Street. You see that there's around 22,000 cars a day operating on that road. And then on Beatty Place, which transitions into College Street where the cultural corridor would be, you're seeing around 13,400 cars a day. So I'm going to advance to the next slide. And I want to mention very briefly, really 4 to 5 independent projects that we're talking about. One of them is more of a comprehensive corridor level improvement, and then 3 are local spot improvements. So number 1 being there, if we're going to start right at the cultural corridor, the signal at Elford Street is being looked at for removal. And this is a point of recurring stops along Academy Street. So if you've ever driven on it, you know that sometimes you will get stopped at that signal, and it may not be necessarily clear why that's happening. And there's also a very relatively low volume signal, and so it's a prime candidate for removal in a situation like this. Paired with that is the potential to implement a road diet on Elford Street as well. We're mentioning that it's not a prime part of this project particularly, but it does open that up for a possibility. I want to mention too, along Academy Street are several signals, and believe it or not, there are as many signals on Academy Street as there are on Beatty Place and College Street. So if you're traveling across town from east to west, you're going to pass through the same number of signals regardless of your route. And this is something that we learned when we were working on the downtown transportation master plan, is that through our polling, a lot of people think that there are more signals and more stops along Academy. So one way that we can help address that is to install equipment that promotes connectivity between signals so that they can stay in constant communication, and the clocks within those signals can be consistent across the route. And then doing that, you can maintain proper coordination during your peak time. So you can create what we call bands of traffic that can make it through the corridor without having to stop at every signal or every other signal. Moving over to more to the east side of the city, there's a circle at Church Street and Academy Street. And this is a location where the left turn from Academy Street onto Church Street is sometimes it gets there's more cars waiting to turn than there is available storage. So we have a slide that kind of illustrates what the proposed project there will be to address that. And then finally, down at Academy Street and East North Street, we have a project that is intended to improve accessibility as you're traveling inbound off of 385. Next slide, please. I mentioned the signal at Elford at Academy is a candidate for removal. If this were to be removed, what would be left over would be an accessible right in and right out intersection. If you were on Elford Street and you were approaching Academy, you would have to stop at a stop sign, and your only move would be to be able to turn right. Would be the only option that you would have. There would be a raised median that would be extended along Academy to control movements there. I will say too, actually going back to that slide, you can get a sense just looking at the closeness of those two signals. I don't know if it's, yeah, so the signal at Buncombe and the signal at College, and then if there's a signal at Elford today, those are 3 signals that are very, very close together. And when you have that and you have the volumes that you see, you know, in this type of road, you know, it's only natural to get some of that spillback that's happening today. So the opportunity to take a signal out is one that should be explored and that we are exploring. I mentioned Church Street at Academy. If you actually can get a sense of it in the aerial, you can see those cars that are waiting to turn left from Academy onto Church Street. They are actually exceeding the available storage that is there today in that turn lane. And so when that happens, they back up and they can block a through lane. And when you have one entire lane at a signal that's blocked on a road that needs those lanes for the signals to operate efficiently, that can cause your spillbacks and some of your slowdown and some of your friction points that I know a lot of you are experiencing today. And so the proposed project would be to do some medium work to extend that left turn lane, make it longer and more accessible, and reduce the likelihood of through lane blockages like that's happening in that picture. And then finally, Academy at East North Street. I mentioned, being able to get to Academy from 385. Right now, today, there's a right turn lane, but it is a short turn lane. And what this project is aiming to do is to add a right turn movement to that inside through lane that's currently there today. So you would have the ability to turn right from either one of those lanes. And what that does is number one, it opens it up for more lanes for that movement to be made from. It also decreases the number of lane changes that you have to make. You can now come in on 385 and be in the middle lane on 385 and make one lane change and be positioned to be able to access Academy Street at that signal. You don't have to everyone doesn't need to be in that right-hand lane coming off of the freeway just to be able to make one lane change to get to Academy. Have options to use additional inbound freeway lanes. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Nick DePalma, and he's going to run through the cultural corridor improvement timeline.
And Nick, I'm not going to rush you, but I am going to rush you and say, if you can walk us through the timeline fairly quickly, we've got a lot of great questions that I want to make sure that you and Nick and the consultants have time to answer. Or you and Clint, Nick. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I can run through this pretty quick. So everybody, I just wanted to go through the schedule pretty quickly, show you guys what we're thinking as far as timeline and when we can get started. So we're going to kind of phase this project into two distinct, groupings. And one grouping would be the actual work on cultural corridor on College Avenue. The other group would be the actual Academy Street improvements. So the cultural corridor piece, we think we can have final design probably fall, winter of this year. And we would be aiming to begin construction in the spring of 2023. So that's kind of an accelerated timeline, but we think you would start seeing construction around that time. In the meantime, we can go to the next slide. We would be going ahead and working on some of those improvements along Academy Street so that we can begin construction in that in the fall of this year so that it can proceed our construction on the cultural corridor. And that kind of allows us to give cars a route to go around downtown before construction potentially starts on cultural corridor and on College, so that during construction, if we have a lane closed for construction or whatever it might be, there's a logical route on Academy to get around. And we'll move on and go to the next slide.
Look at that. Questions and comments. Okay, so I'm going to start backwards on a couple of these, and feel free, anyone here, to field these comments as we go. This one just came in, but it was asked earlier as well. Question about why we decided not to extend this all the way to kind of Atwood, Butler, that direction. And what the thoughts are on that being part of a future phase to continue this a little bit further. I'm going to call on you if you don't choose to answer. Nick, it looks like you get this one.
So the main goal of this project was access, pedestrian and bicycle access and mobility from downtown, from the heart of downtown to our museums and everything at Heritage Green. So yes, the other access is important. And we'll continue to look at it just like we do all of our other projects. But this specific project, the main goal was access to those museums. And also that is why the project stops there.
Yeah, because really looking to be this key connector and a safe connector between downtown and the museums and that sort of thing. So there was some concern, obviously, about the methods in which we are trying to improve pedestrian safety. Some concern, we've seen from folks here that the white walk signal wouldn't necessarily be enough to make that safe. Some folks asking, did we consider a pedestrian bridge instead? And so, Brett, can you talk through some of the engineering or thoughts here about, the signal that you mentioned, and how the left turn was going to change. Is there any possibility, some folks are asking about prohibiting right turns as well, because they feel like that could still be dangerous?
Sure, I can try to answer that question. I'm not sure I'm totally clear on the question about the pedestrian crossing light. But as far as prohibiting right turns, that right turn, I guess we're referring to, if we're referring to the College Street right turn onto Academy, that
Yes.
volume is pretty low. That's something that we haven't really discussed with the DOT, and would have to see what effect that might have, because those folks that do use that would have to figure out a different way to get to Academy Street. So we'd have to kind of see what the results of that would be, how to operations in the core there, because it may have an effect with folks using Main Street or Town Street to get to those points. So that's a good question. That's something that we can definitely look into more clearly. The challenging one, I will say the challenging right turn is the right turn that is from Academy onto College Street. And that is a very, very high volume movement. That's one of the big challenges we have with this project. So we definitely will look into, as we get into the design phase, some different ways to treat that and make it safer for pedestrians, and put some additional measures in place to make drivers more aware that they have to stop. Potentially putting up, we can use what's called a blank out sign, where you can prohibit right turns during the red. When they're on the red, they'll know that there's a pedestrian that's actuated the button to cross College Street. And so there are different ways we can add enhancements to that traffic signal and those crossings to make them safer and more visible, and also alert motorists. We all know that that's a challenge these days, to keep people in their cars alert to what's going on. And so unfortunately, we're going to have to contend with the fact that there's a lot of traffic that's coming from Academy and wanting to get back onto SC 183, which is College Street. And by using the bypass, that's where they come back and rejoin that street. So there are going to be a lot of cars making that turn, but there are some ways during the design that we can mitigate that as best as possible, make it more safe if you're standing at that corner.
And so what did we ever consider a pedestrian bridge? And somebody else wanted to know if we'd looked at a diagonal crossing.
So I'll try to address the diagonal crossing. That was an idea early in the concept. The diagonal crossing requires basically a full pedestrian phase for that traffic signal. So all directions have to have, for cars, have to stop. That's a really difficult thing to do with an intersection that's got as much congestion and traffic as it does. So that idea is going to be really difficult to implement at this location, just because of the large number of traffic that use that intersection. The other thing is that we kind of visualize this being a corridor that, as I showed on the concept, we're proposing shared paths on both sides of College Street. So we kind of envision that people will use this more as a grid network, getting to and from places on both sides of College Street. You've got the Canvas Tower opening up as well. So the diagonal works really well. A, if you can make the traffic work with it, and B, if you've got really a linear path people are trying to follow on like a trail, for instance. This, we see a lot of people using both sides of the street, wanting to cross from multiple sides of the street. So that's why we went that route with the more traditional crossing of two legs of the intersection. Pedestrian bridge, we did not look at. The right of way is pretty constrained there to do much. And the budget is certainly limited to what can be done with the available real estate. And a pedestrian bridge would fall well beyond the budgetary constraints for the project, and be very difficult, quite honestly, to fit in that location, as close as the buildings are to the corners of the intersection.
Appreciate that. Thank you. One of the other
Sure.
questions, I guess, as we look at lane reduction in some places was a concern about increased traffic then on Butler. Is that something that's going to be studied?
We did look at, and I might have to pull Graham into this to help me out. Increase on Butler, I'm not sure how the
Yeah,
connection would be with the road diet heading westbound, how that would affect Butler, but maybe Graham, you could speak to this.
right. So our study area did not include Butler. The limits of the study really extended to Academy on the west, and then as far south as McBee and Washington. Some intersections along Academy were studied there. So, you know, as far as traffic increases or decreases on Butler, I don't have any numbers to pull from, but, you know, at the same time, the direction of traffic that's being impacted on College Street is the westbound direction for people that are already interior to the city. And so, you know, that to me does not necessarily mean that there is really a driving factor in, you know, people choosing an alternate route via Butler or somewhere else if they are intending to go, you know, if they're coming from the south and are heading, you know, to the northwest, for instance, and are choosing to use Butler as a route to get through. I don't see this necessarily changing that tremendously. The volume of traffic entering the intersection at Academy and College is not changing. The thing that is changing is the direction that the traffic is entering from. So there's less traffic coming from College, more traffic coming from Academy, from the north side, from the top end. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope that answers the question, or at least, you know, gives some insight into what we've studied.
And
Yeah,
I will
yeah.
add to that,
Yeah.
that response is that the 4 lanes that are out there on College Street today it's overbuilt. The traffic, the 13,000 cars that Graham mentioned on his graphic don't need 4 lanes. That's a feature that was done decades ago, and it's just excessive for the amount of traffic that's using that roadway corridor. So.
And Graham, since you're up, you had briefly alluded to the idea of a possible road diet on Elford. I don't know if we have any graphics or anything about that, but it certainly piqued some people's interest. So could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, you know, as far as it goes, this is a fairly new discussion point, but, you know, for those that are wondering what that might look like, you know, a road diet with Elford, it's 4 lanes today. You know, the lanes can be repurposed if that's the route that is taken, you know, and so a lot of times what you'll see is when you've got a 4-lane section like that, you may reduce it to 2 through lanes, and you may preserve 1 lane for a center turn lane for left turns. And then the reserve space could be used to expand pedestrian footprint within the shoulder, or it could be used to add bike lanes or parking, or you know, curbside loading zones, or whatever the case may be given the context of the road. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add to the Elford Street idea in general, but
I think that hits it. It's not part of this project per se.
Okay.
It would be a future project that we would, the city would have to look at doing. What closing that traffic signal does makes it easier, because you don't need the left turn off of Elford Street anymore. You could get away with a single lane on Elford coming out at Academy. So it helps from that standpoint, and it gives you the opportunity to do it. There's not a huge volume of traffic on Elford, so a single lane in each direction would be more than sufficient. Whether you need the center turn lane, that would need to be studied, whether that could be used, or you could look at doing on-street parking as well. I know you definitely need it down there for the facility as you get towards the Church Street end there, because that side of the street's used regularly for events at the Bon Secure Arena. So there's a lot of variables that would need to come into play with looking at Elford Street as a road diet.
And I think
Okay,
I'll
well,
just add to
yeah,
that a little bit.
Go ahead.
I'll add a
Yeah.
little bit more to that. We're in discussions with the Greek church, St. George Church there, about things we can do with the closure of that Elford signal, and the church uses that that's kind of part of their access plan, and we've been in discussions with them. And I know, just as Brett was mentioning, increasing parking just in our central business district. I know parking is definitely something we would probably certainly be looking at with that kind of road diet type repurposing of Elford Street. And then this additionally doing some further sidewalk enhancements. They have a driveway on Academy Street that we're looking at as well, what we could do to make that their access further north on Academy Street safer as well.
And Clint, I know we started a couple of minutes late, so we'll go over by a minute or two, but we are kind of running out here on time. I want to point everybody to the chat box where this is a reminder that we are actively seeking input and we'll consider it. So we have a survey. I put the link there in the chat box. We'll post it to the city's website, put it out on social media as well, send it directly to impacted neighborhoods. We do have a neighborhood texting service. So if you're one of the neighborhood presidents that have taken advantage of that, we strongly encourage you to share this link with your neighbors. But again, Clint, I think the overwhelming thing as we wrap this up is this concern of, are we doing enough to make this pedestrian friendly and make people, feel safe in this crossing of what has traditionally been a very busy road with a lot of traffic on it?
Yeah, and I think as you can see from the plans, the reduction of the travel lane on College Avenue, the narrowing of the existing lanes, they're very wide lanes out there today. We can narrow those up. I think it's really going to calm the traffic down. It's going to make the really get a better balance of the users of the road, if you will. As Brett mentioned, that we don't need that many lanes for the traffic that's on College Avenue. We certainly want to do things to improve traffic flow on Academy Street to offset traffic and try to get the people who are just bypassing through to use Academy Street to wrap around and further maybe take a few cars off of College Street. But by narrowing those lanes and reducing the travel lane, we're creating a lot of opportunity to expand our sidewalks. I mean, we're talking 12 to 14 foot wide sidewalks and really enhanced landscape areas separating the pedestrians from the travelways. So we did, at one time, the project scope was kind of looking at dedicated bike lanes on the road and or a cycle track that was buffered and separated from the sidewalk area. But as we continue to kind of scope the project out and look at it, we just felt like having just kind of more the multi-use path and sidewalk was the better route for us to go. I know there's a lot of questions on Butler as well. And Butler is kind of a separate project that city's actively looking at. We're in discussions with DOT on Butler Street, and we're looking at bike lanes and things we can do to calm traffic on Butler as well. So not anticipating this project to really increase traffic on Butler, but we do recognize Butler is a kind of a cut through traffic, and we've recently done some things with truck restrictions and looking at some other things for Butler. It's kind of a separate project from this, but it's not a project that we're postponing or delaying, or it's just kind of a separate initiative we're looking at. But appreciate all the good questions. Definitely want to get your feedback on those two alternatives for the College and Academy intersection.
Yeah, and again, it looks like we've got some positive comments here. The folks from the Greek Church letting you know that they are looking forward to continuing to work with you, Clint, and to our consultants who are here with us this evening. Deeply grateful for your time and explanations. This really is the first public meeting, and this project is not happening tomorrow, as Nick shared in the timeline, but it is something that is a priority for council and leadership. And so we would like to hear your feedback. And so I've posted again the survey link there. We will take down these comments, and if we didn't get to asking them or answering them during this meeting, potentially future meetings, or as part of an FAQ, or if you want specific outreach, we will, continue to try to answer as many questions. I see a lot of familiar names on here. You know how to reach us, and we're happy to continue working with you. But please continue to check the website. Continue to share the survey notes, because engagement and an opportunity to hear the voices of the folks in our community is deeply important. It is not just lip service. So just want to thank everybody for being here with us this evening, and go ahead and close things out and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much, Clint, Brett, Graham, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.